The irony in our country is that the educated people who are so-called educated university people
Yeah,
are out of jobs.
right.
But at the low level,
Right.
they're doing well.
Did it ever bother you that how am I going to manage it?
It did, of course. And as I said, when I came back
At the
then in 1970, it was very stark
yeah,
situation. The expectations were very high, and there was nothing. If you give handouts, they take it for granted,
yeah,
and they don't respect it. They looked outwards. Government nahi kiya, and there's a hole outside your house. You can fill it up yourself.
yeah,
You don't have to wait for the government to go and fill it up.
yeah,
So Jodhpur all of a sudden was put in a corner and with no leadership. So that's when I came back in
Revived.
1970,
Yeah.
and it was pretty drab at that time. Most challenging one part was, I think, my 2 years in Rajya Sabha. Politics I just could not get on with.
Once upon a time lived a legendary Rathore clan. Keeping their glorious tradition alive is a man who walks through the race of time, the Maharaja of Jodhpur, His Highness Gat Singh Ji II. The story of a boy who would be a king, the story of his fight to preserve and protect the monumental legacy, the story of his mission to serve his people and fulfill his role as a modern Maharaja. With this conversation, we are going to romance the magic of the past, step into your royal world, get the glimpse of your amazing mind, and meet an incredible and inspiring personality, His Highness the Maharaja of Jodhpur, fondly called as Babji.
Thank you. Thank you, Shanu.
So you became Maharaja at the age of 4. At the age of 8, you were sent to England for your studies.
Yes.
And when you came back at the age of 23, it is said that people of Jodhpur flocked on the street and it took you nearly 12 hours to reach the Umaid Bhavan
Correct.
Palace. And that was the energy and that was the welcoming vibe that people had for you.
Correct.
But coming from a world where you were studying, where you had no responsibilities, when a person studies, the only responsibility is to absorb education. From there, subsuming such monumental responsibility, how did you feel about it? How did you prepare yourself for it?
Well, I must say I didn't expect anything like that. It came at a bang, and it was very awe-inspiring. And I was really... it had two effects on me. One was it reminded me of my responsibilities and my legacy. And the other was that it gave me a lot of courage that the people still had that affection.
Yeah,
But at the same time, it gave me a lot of anxiety
yeah,
as to what the needs might be, what the demand might be from me,
yeah,
who had no experience, who had no power anymore, and yet to get this kind of adulation. So it occurred to me that yes, they don't know me. It's because of the legacy of my family.
yeah,
It's because of what they have done, what my grandfather did for the development of Marwar and the city, what my father did. In just a few years, he swept the board in the first election,
yeah,
including his own seats. So I realized that, and this was at the time in 1970. In 71, we lost our privileges.
yeah,
That whole debate was going on.
yeah.
So whereas one side of India was very anti
The privy
people
purse.
like us,
Yeah.
and the press and the media and the bureaucracy, the politics, here was something else and completely different.
Yeah,
So it made me feel that I have to somehow connect and recreate the role
yeah.
which I was born into.
And when you started fitting in this role, did it come naturally to you? Because you definitely have this in
So in a way, because I inherited my father's position, whatever it was, my Raj Tilak was another 4. So from that age onwards, my mother was, instilling certain values and beliefs in me. My grandmother, particularly in terms of what it meant to the people, to the land. And that kind of conditioning I got
Yeah,
right from the beginning, and the elders and the staff and the people around me. And it stayed with me all the way to England, where I knew that I had to come back.
yeah.
And I had a role to play.
Wow. So you finished your university. Did if this unfortunate thing had not happened at that point of time, because you lost your father at an early age, you knew that the responsibility you're going to shoulder on. But was there an alternate career in your mind at that early age?
Would have definitely wanted to go to America
Yeah.
after my first degree and done something there. It's a fanciful idea I had, maybe being an architect.
Oh, wow.
But
So,
I don't know if I could have got through all the rigorous examinations, but this is
I'm
something.
sure you would have, sir.
But in a way, I fulfilled that by way of all my conservation works and what I came back to, and to revive some of our monuments and our properties and to
Brilliant.
make them functional again. So that was, in a way, architectural.
So you've been Maharaja all your life, and like many Maharajas, you really made the transition very gracefully. You've been a businessman, you've been an educationist, you've been a high commissioner, you've been a politician, and the cultural ambassador of Jodhpur. Which role is the closest to your heart, and which job did you find the most challenging?
I think cultural ambassador for Jodhpur is something which I was born into.
Yes.
So that something has stayed with me and is my identity. Most challenging one part was, I think, my 2 years in Rajya Sabha.
Oh, okay.
Politics I just could not get on with.
You're known to be a very apolitical person.
Yes. So I realized it's a very great opportunity I got, but it's only 2 years to see it from up close.
Yeah.
And I realized it's not for me, that I won't be able to make the kind of mark that is expected. And therefore, and also it meant if you had to make an impact, you had to be more in Delhi than in Jodhpur.
Sure.
I wanted to be in Jodhpur.
Sure.
And that's why I thought it's better to work outside of politics.
Right.
In fact, that's one thing that struck me very strongly when I came back from England, where everything is not so political. That here, everything was political.
Yeah.
And I said, now, surely there are ways and means of doing things which are not political.
Wow.
And so that's how I got into setting up my foundations and trusts and so on.
Interesting, sir. So Jodhpur has become the center for the international jet setter. Does it surprise you how Jodhpur has become the place globally?
Jodhpur always had a national and global place, right up to my father's times. But what happened that in the quick succession, my grandfather and father died, 47 and 52.
Yeah.
And then there was a partition.
Yeah.
So and then there was Jodhpur became part of Rajasthan.
Yeah.
So the focus was on Jaipur. Jaipur was the capital. So Jodhpur all of a sudden was put in a corner
Oh,
and with no leadership. So that's when I came back in
revived.
1970
Yeah.
and it was pretty drab at that time. So reviving tourism, putting Jodhpur back on the map, because I knew that Jodhpur had the potential. It had the
Charm.
the glamour, it had the culture, and to get all that, get people to be proud of their culture, to project it. So we started on all that, and gradually Jodhpur came into its own.
You've done a brilliant job. I think it is all your hard work that Jodhpur requires no introduction internationally or nationally anywhere in the world for its culture and heritage. Sir, when Rajmata Sahib had come to Jodhpur at the age of 17, in one of her interviews, she mentioned that there was Parda system. From there to you establishing the schools for Rajmata, and you always been an ambassador for girl education and women empowerment. From that Jodhpur to the Jodhpur that you have now, and your foundation doing amazing work with women and girl education. This sense of purpose and sense of meaning, does it come from Rajmata Sahib to you, or
Yes.
was it?
It was her wish, her desire. And when you talk about Parda, strangely it was although she used to go around, but in Jodhpur itself, she never attended any public function
Oh,
until the election. It was because of my reception that I got. And then people got very excited. It was because next year was going to be the election. And they wanted me to stand. But as you just rightly said, I was 23.
yeah,
I was not even 25.
yeah.
So then they got after my mother, and they took permission from my grandmother. They went to her, and my grandmother said, okay, she can step out into the public.
So that is the first time she
Yes.
stepped out.
Stepped out in the public.
Wow.
So that was it. And then, of course, after going around and seeing the situation, conditions of women, she was very keen that we do something for women's education. So
Right.
there was a big Sammelan actually, Rajput Sammelan,
Yeah.
at Chopasni School,
Okay.
where many of the religious leaders came and the community leaders and so on. And we all said we have to do something for girls' education.
Okay.
So everybody took a pledge that they would do something. So that's when we started this Rajmata Krishna Kumari Girls' School.
When you started the school, you must have a vision.
Yeah.
But how has it evolved over the years now?
Well, I mean, the school has done absolute wonders. We had no inkling that it would reach the kind of levels it has today.
Yeah.
It has been very satisfying. But it is a public school, a girls' public school, CBSE, and people are paying, except for a few scholarships, full fees.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I saw it coming, and there was need for rural children
Yeah.
from modest backgrounds. So we started 2 hostels, again in the name of my mother. One was in Desuri, where there's a small fort
Okay.
and a haveli at the bottom, and it's all walled. So that was what was considered. Girls were not sent in those days. When we started somewhere in the 80s, people were reluctant to let their girls go out
Yeah, sure.
beyond it to school. They used to go to school to probably since the 6 or 8 or whatever. So when they realized that this was being run by the family and it was in a secure place,
Oh,
they started sending their girls.
yeah.
So we have, at one time we had 150 girls, but that became too crowded. We have about 100 girls now
Wow.
from rural background
Okay.
who go to school at the government school, is just outside the gate on land that we had given to the village.
Nice.
So that they go there. And there's also an English medium school in the village. Some girls go there.
Yeah.
And they're fed, housed, clothed, given tuition, sports within the hostel, within the fort premises. So basically they get all the other inputs from us, except they attend the school, which actually is not a very good school,
Okay.
unfortunately. It's understaffed. But on the books of Rajasthan government, it's a very good school because our girls do well.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
it's a kind of dichotomy
Yeah.
because everyone says the school is doing very well, but it's not. We were always in a fight with them in local administration to fill up all the posts.
Yeah.
There was a time when the principal used to come from Jodhpur, and it's a 3-hour drive.
Yeah.
Which shows you how much connect the principal had with this school.
Oh my God. So 3 hours.
So anyway, we still have that problem, but anyway,
Yeah.
now we're going to spend a little money on actually repairing that school because it's leaking and all that. So we give them. So apart from the hospital,
Okay.
we're adopting the school as well.
So just not your own school.
And then another one was a haveli given to us by one of the Majisars,
Okay.
one of the Thakur's mothers. And she had no heirs. So
So
she
she-
gave us part of the haveli,
Oh, brilliant.
and where we run the school. Again, another hostel, and that's close to Jodhpur.
Okay.
And there, what we've done is that we bus the girls into town rather than sending them to the local government school, which wasn't very popular. So we bring them to Chopasni. In Chopasni, we have three different distinct schools.
Nice.
We have Mayur Chopasni, which
Yeah.
is English medium,
Yeah.
and then we have Hanwant School, which is English medium but Rajasthan board,
Right.
and then we have the original Chopasni, higher secondary,
Right.
which is Hindi medium, Rajasthan board.
Okay.
So they can choose in any of these schools.
Right.
And just now we had a couple of girls who came amongst the toppers in the Hanwant in the Mayur Chopasni school.
Yeah.
So that was really very encouraging.
Do you feel that the pupil or the girls or the boys coming from the privileged family, and the students coming from family where there is some sort of a scarcity, do you sometimes see that there is a huge talent gap, or maybe?
There is, yes, because we need to provide them the opportunities.
Yeah,
Opportunities, everything. So in this way, to a certain extent, we're able to subsidize education into a good school.
right. You've done a brilliant job, sir. We never knew about so much has been done by you and the family for so many women and so many girls. So you believe in the philosophy of teaching a person to fish rather than simply giving them a fish. Why it is important for the educators to adopt this approach, and how can it fundamentally change the life of the students?
With the people, if you give handouts, they take it for granted
Yeah,
and they don't respect it. And that's how things have happened with government. And what we saw, what I saw at least when I came back to England, that post independence and the advent of democracy,
yeah,
the ability, self-sufficiency, Gandhi's village life, they lost
yeah,
that control.
yeah,
They looked outwards for handouts. And government ने किया. And there's a hole outside your house. Now you can fill it up yourself.
yeah,
You don't have to wait for the government to come fill it up.
yeah.
The government ने किया, better again. So that kind of attitude
Mindset, yeah,
crept in.
yeah,
So I realized that we need to revive, whenever you do something there, people themselves should be involved in it. And that's when the water projects.
yeah,
Basically, they build them the facilities themselves, and they have to contribute. They have to contribute 1/3 of the price.
oh, okay,
Yeah, and then there's a sense of ownership.
true,
Then it's theirs. Not only ownership, then afterward, then they maintain it also. So that's how we did it. And so we got into building first talabs,
yeah,
the water harvesting structures, because the subsoil water in Rajasthan is completely gone.
yeah, eroded,
So that old system of water harvesting served two purposes. The surface water was used,
yeah,
and the water that drained down remained in the ground and was available in the wells. So, and they were abandoned, a lot of the village talabs. You know, every village
Yeah,
in Rajasthan has a talab. So we got them to re-adopt their talabs,
yeah,
de-silt them, look after them, and also formed village committees and Jal Sabhas, in which all kinds of people, every caste and community had to be involved, including women.
yeah,
And also children were taught. We did programs in schools, water harvesting, roof water harvesting, and tankas in the schools,
interesting,
and involved the children in maintaining that. So that way it became an activity of the village. And around that activity, then there was a sense of cohesion again.
yeah,
So
They
then
form
other
a
things,
cohort, yeah.
So then the other things took off, like looking after the catchment area, growing trees and grasses, and making sure that it's not spoiled, and a sense of belonging. So then there was a big demand that the Orans
yeah,
get protected, because they were not being protected,
right,
and they were not properly recorded in the government records.
right,
And so even government was taking advantage of that, settling people there, giving them out for electrical substations,
yeah,
for windmills, and
yeah,
all kinds of inappropriate activities for the village. These are common lands
yeah,
and sacred. So recently, I'm very happy to say that the Supreme Court has passed an order that Orange should be deemed forests.
yeah.
So we won that battle.
So I think you've been professing this philosophy for a very long time, and I think Supreme Court has also now say no to freebies which the government doles out. So I think you've been doing it much before
No,
them.
people, I mean, they're just encouraging them to do it. They do it themselves.
But sense of ownerships make them really active, and you've seen
That's it.
this over a period of
Yeah.
time.
Because in a democracy, it's only people's voice that works.
Exactly. Sir, a lot of learning comes from your life. Beyond the academic knowledge, such as skills like critical thinking, communication, collaboration, problem solving skills, what do you think is the role of these skills in a life of a man?
I think it's essential. These are ways of engaging, being inclusive, and giving something back to society.
Right.
And it's something that people should work at.
Right.
And it doesn't come easily also. It doesn't come from direct education. Education, when I think education is in larger sense, not just academic stuff.
Yeah.
It's education is more than that.
Yes.
For instance, I think I learned more at Oxford
Okay.
from just being there,
Yeah.
not with the books. I wasn't a good student.
Just the
Just being-
experience of being at
Being
Oxford.
with people of a certain aptitude, a certain intelligence, knowledge, one's own peers, as well as one's tutors, the level of conversation, you pick up a lot of things. I'm saying being in the right kind of environment,
Right.
you imbibe a lot.
Right.
And it's a learning process over time. When you, there's never any complete answers. Solving skills, they evolve. You can't, they don't come to you immediately.
Right.
But the aim and the desire to learn and to get to the root cause is something that must come from inside.
So early education was in Cothill? Your early education
Yeah,
was in Cothill.
Cotton was in prep school.
And after that, you did your middle school and everything also from England, right? Your middle school and
Eton.
from Eton. So, are you still in touch with all your classmates, or few of them, or maybe from
Very, very few from prep school,
Okay,
one or two,
okay,
but quite a few from Eton,
from Eton.
and all my friends from the university.
All your friends from. So, do you
University, because many people from Eton also came
to visit you?
in my year, and there were quite a few people I didn't know from Eton, because Eton was a very big school,
Right.
1,200 boys. So I got to know them better at university,
Okay.
and they remained friends. A handful of friends, about friends you can't have. They remain in touch. They come here and I go there, and in fact I'm going there now with my wife, and I look forward to seeing them all. So I go to their homes and travel around the countryside, and also meet up in London.
Interesting. Do you exchange ideas? Do they
Yes.
know that what kind of work you're doing here?
Yes, always. In fact, when I first came back from England, after going there in 1956, I came back in 1970. And then I stayed here for 2 years before going back to England. That was the longest I'd been away from England. So when I went back, I was apprehensive whether the friends would still be there and
Yeah.
so on. And when I realized that no, friends are friends.
Yeah.
It was like yesterday.
Wow.
But what I did realize is that that is a period when you leave university, everybody is in a quandary.
Right.
They're searching.
Yeah.
They haven't found
The path.
yeah. So I realized that everybody was in the same kind of situation. But I had something concrete to get back to,
Right.
which was here.
Right after the
Yeah.
university.
So that gave me even more determination to come back and play my part.
Okay. So for students hearing you, sir, what happens is there is a dropout culture also lately. Like, a lot of people, they drop out of the colleges, start their own businesses. So there is a constant conundrum that happens in a student mind, that is domain knowledge very important, is experiential learning very important, or a mentorship or an instructor or a teacher is more important. So what, according to you, helped you the most in being where you are today?
I
Domain
think
knowledge.
the exposure I got
Exposure.
in England
Yeah.
was very important, and,
Okay.
and the whole education system there, and taught me to look at things. I mean, I think it was very brave of my mother
Right.
to have sent me off.
Yeah.
For her, it was very lonely, but
Yeah.
it was a brave decision, and I really appreciate that now. The only difference is that I don't have friends of that school level
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Although I made friends afterwards, and friends of my cousins and
Of course.
my age group became
Right.
my friends.
Right.
But that happened afterwards. But my real friends are overseas.
True.
And so it is that whole experience. And then to also look back and to see how, Europe is a very interesting place, because not so funny, it's almost like India in itself, because of the number of languages spoken and all that. There are different countries. We are one country with many states. But the size and the diversity,
Yeah.
we have more here, and we have a lot of culture. And the way that they are modern industrial states,
Yeah.
and some are monarchies still, but still the way they've managed their cultural resources
Yeah.
is something which we don't understand at all. And that's something that I picked up and learned from them. I said, we have so much, and surely we can do something with it.
British had ruled the entire world at one point of time only on the basis of the great admin skills which they had. So I'm sure you must have taken home the great admin skill when you came back, because you were definitely subsuming. I mean, you inherited white elephants, the properties which are like so humongous in nature. Did it ever bother you that how am I going to manage it?
It did, of course. And as I said, when I came back,
At the
then in 1970, it was very stark.
yeah,
Situation, the expectations were very high, and there was nothing, because the privy purse had been removed.
yeah,
We were put on the blacklist from being pampered citizens. The administration was a struggle. The left-wing politics
yeah,
of the then government, high taxation, urban sealing, land sealing.
yeah,
That's all we had. And then these white elephants, as you say.
yeah.
So that was the thing that to turn them around, to make them. It took time, and so I created companies and trusts and so on,
Yeah.
which had all been done before by the businessmen, much earlier. But
Sounds very fancy, as you say, like,
we were much late.
yeah,
Too late,
yeah.
but still gradually, over time, things have fallen into place.
You manage the white elephants and how the world is seeing that already.
Yeah.
So at one point you said that the government has blacklisted you, I mean the royals and everything, and took the titles away. But after some time they looked back at you and they said, hey, we need tourism.
No, I
in
think
our-"
it is. It's the generation that the post-independent generation who were not conditioned
Yes.
by that period
Yeah.
of the 50s.
True.
And, and even we, while growing up, went through this, that, everything that's old is
Yeah.
backward.
Yeah.
Look forward. Forget about your past.
Brilliant.
Look forward to the future, modernity. So we look to America and we look to Germany and fancy cars and all that kind of thing. And forgot about our own strengths.
Yeah.
And so that's what became important.
You've said a very beautiful line that you are the link between the past and the present, looking into the future. So was that the feeling when you resumed everything? Did you feel that you are the link between the past and present?
Not at that time. It evolved in a way. Then I realized that this is a role that can be played,
Yeah.
and this is what people expect also.
I'm going to just ask one question related to MU20 School of Opportunity. It has been creating diverse learning opportunities for students, ranging from STEM education to leadership to entrepreneurship to theatricals, policy making, and other fields. How do you envision the impact of such specialized skill in the development of students?
I think it all depends on, you have to look at an individual.
Yeah.
And each individual has special characteristics, special talents. And I think that's so important about schooling. And everyone is not the same. And the essence of a good school is the ability to recognize
That particular talent.
those talents in those people and bring them up and encourage that. People may not be good at maths. They may not be good at writing.
Right.
But they may be good artists. They may be good sports people. They may be good thinkers. So it's the ability to bring those talents out. And I think the parents also have to learn now. And the parents, it's one thing we face this with parents. The parents have fixed ideas about what they want their children to be.
Absolutely.
And that is an old way of doing things. Now there are opportunities. At one time there weren't opportunities in India. When I came back, there were very few opportunities. You either joined the family business, you went into the army, joined the foreign service, or you became a farmer, which was being
Yeah.
euphemistic for doing nothing.
Yeah.
Or if you were talented, you became a doctor or a lawyer. That was it. Today, there are so many opportunities.
career
Opportunities where people can, startups, people can do things on their own.
Yeah.
There's so many people like you. I mean, you come out of a good public school and you made yourself. And that is how the future is. And that's what we have in India. So creation of opportunities. One of the big things now
Yeah.
is that, the government is not unable to provide jobs.
Creation of new opportunities. Yeah.
But I think government is working on opportunities.
Right.
Some of the things are being on the startups and so on. But yes, we need to have educated people
Right.
finding places. The irony in our country is that the educated people who are so-called educated university people
Yeah.
are out of jobs.
Right.
But at the low level,
Right.
they're doing well
Yeah.
because now there's so many opportunities
Yeah.
with the infrastructure developments and so on that's happening.
True.
People are getting jobs.
Yeah.
So it is creation of opportunities. And to answer your question again, skill development. We have to get the aptitude of some.
Correct.
It's not necessary to go and get a degree.
Sure.
You get your skill development certainly. Our craftspeople, they have to become literate.
Yeah.
They have the skills, but they're not literate. So to get them into the working economy.
Working economy. Right. So you mentioned that it is for parents or your mentors or somebody around you to find out the talent in the child and probably nurture it. Who was that someone for you who found the talent in young?
Well, you see, not having a father meant that I had a lot of female attention.
Yeah.
And of course, the ladies of the household think you got everything. You're the best.
Yeah.
And of course, I got that from my mother.
Yeah.
At the same time, she was not overindulgent.
Okay.
She said it was very important that to be humble and not get carried away by status and things
Yeah.
like that. But I think it was my uncle,
Okay.
my maternal uncle, who organized for me to go abroad.
Okay.
He was at Oxford,
Oh.
and he was one of the last ruling Maharajas, a young man.
Okay.
And so he felt very dejected.
Right.
So he went away
Right.
and became an academic.
Okay.
Went to Oxford by himself with his servant. Left his family behind. So he was there then when I was in school. So he organized for my schooling
Okay.
there. So he became a kind of mentor to me.
So that's the nudge.
Yeah, that's one. Secondly, it's actually the school. It was Eton. Because getting into Eton was a big thing.
Yes.
And my prep school managed, somehow I got in. But when I got there, I immediately got a double promotion, which was a kind of recognition.
Right. Given to the.
That gave me, again, you think, finding the talent.
Right.
So that gave me a lot of confidence
Right.
that I could now.
How, we have like letters from principal if you're doing
Yeah.
good. So that recognition
Yeah,
instilled
yeah.
confidence.
Yeah.
Interesting. You said that the most, cherished role that you see yourself as a cultural ambassador of Jodhpur. So your commitment to preserve the culture and heritage is inspiring. But how do you ensure that future generations will keep doing the same thing?
Well, I go to various schools and functions, and I keep hammering this point in.
Yeah.
It's very good. Yeah. The other thing that is one of my passions, and I feel we have been ignored, is that we are not supporting our language,
Right.
the Rajasthani language,
Right.
which is the root of our culture. And unfortunately, for political reasons, it has not got the recognition it has to get.
Right.
So we're working on that, and I hope that now with the change of government,
Yeah.
at least it will become the state language,
Right.
second language of the state.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that will give it certain privileges.
Yeah.
It mean that primary schools can teach it,
Yeah.
so on. We have courses in Rajasthan in universities, but otherwise it's not recognized and not being recognized. So the parents say it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
They want the children to learn English and Hindi,
Yeah.
and it's amazing to see that even the younger generation have stopped speaking our
Right.
language. So that is one of the things that binds the culture, and within that
Yeah.
come all the other nuances
Right.
of your hospitality, your culture, how you greet people,
Yeah.
how you view things
Yeah.
historically, environmentally.
Right.
All those lessons are there in our
In our
written
textbooks,
and
yeah.
poetic language.
Yeah.
Rajasthani is very poetic. A lot of sayings
Yeah.
in Rajasthani are related to culture, how you behave,
Yeah.
how you treat the environment, whether it's the water, conserve water, and trees, animals. All these things come
Yeah.
in that. So it's very essential, I think. And as you say, when I move around, I try to instill these, and it's happening. People are catching up. But at the same time, one of the main things is there's a mismatch
Yeah.
between development and the culture
Yeah.
of building.
Yeah.
So, that takes on
Right.
one thing, and the recognizable aspects of your environment get lost very soon.
True. Very true.
Because the politics and the builders,
They creep in.
they bulldoze through.
Yeah.
Before you know what's happening,
Yeah.
you suddenly lost. You lost a whole lot of trees, or you lost a whole lot of environmental, historical spaces.
Yeah.
They suddenly disappeared
Yeah.
without you even knowing.
Yeah.
So that's when it's important that people themselves are aware
True.
of these aspects.
I've seen you
And
that.
the oral tradition is
Yeah.
is very very strong in Rajasthan.
Right.
Again, the language is required for that.
I've seen that you appeal to your people mostly in your language. Like even if you're making a note or you're giving some sort of message, even on TV, I've heard you talking in that language.
Yes.
So that kind of pride is instilled with a lot of effort in the younger generation. But I think when they see you doing it, I'm sure they're motivated to do it.
Also,
So I want to ask you, your love for cars, your love for polo, how was it there as a child, or did some of the interests grew when you came into this environment?
actually, the polo scene I completely missed out on
Okay.
because when I was growing up, there were no horses there. Everything's gone.
Yeah.
After my father passed away. In fact, my grandfather was more into polo. My father was a bit heavy, but so there was nothing happening here. If it had been, then I would have taken to it, but I didn't take to it. Except when I got to England, I did join the polo club at Oxford.
Okay.
But then I had an operation on my tailbone,
Okay.
so that put an end to that.
Oh.
And but when I came back, I realized how important part of our Jodhpur culture it was.
Right.
I heard about all the old stories, the riding and the polo tournaments that were played.
Yeah.
I saw all the photographs
Yeah.
of my grandfather and taking a team to England and all that. So I said, we must revive
Right.
equestrian sports. So we set about we had a horse show, and that led into two things. So my son took to it, particularly polo, and
Yeah.
so I encouraged him then when
Right.
I saw that he was keen. And then we made a new grass polo ground, and we used to take teams abroad with him. My son,
Yeah, there are-
travel partners, good fun, traveling with something to do.
Yeah.
And we went to different places. We went to Brazil. We went to some Kenya.
Yeah.
In France, England, of course, and that's how it built up. And then we had started our own tournament here, which unfortunately, after my son had an accident, We don't do the team anymore, but we still kept the polo going, and it's one of the most popular polo seasons, and it's at a very good time. It's in end of December,
Okay.
from the 15th to the 30th of December.
Right.
So you got Christmas, New Year,
Yeah.
and all that festive period. So people come, and we have a very good entertainment
Interesting.
at that time. And so that was one. And you said about cars. The cars were there. I always had some kind of interest in cars. I'm not mechanical minded, but we had some old cars of our own, which I wanted to get running again.
Yeah.
So I got them running,
Yeah.
and then there were some cars which had gone out of the family.
Yeah.
Managed to get them back
So you got them back?
Mm.
Wow.
and restored them as well. So we have about not many, a dozen cars, which one more has to be restored. It's still there, it's a Humber. And then the others have to be re-restored because now some time has passed. And so it's nice to have them
Interesting.
because they're also part of the
Culture
culture. Yes.
and heritage. So, Generation Z and Alpha are also going to watch this podcast because School of Opportunity, we have young student as well. So I'm going to keep this section. I'm going to call it rapid fire. I'm sure you've heard of it. So I'm going to ask questions which are going to probably have one word answers and just keeping them
I'm
very.
very bad at that.
No, I mean you're going to do wonderful job. I'm 100% sure. I'm just worried about me. So, what is your favorite sport?
Tennis.
Your favorite car?
My favorite car, I like the Buick that we have, which I grew up in, the convertible Buick 8.
Your favorite Rajasthani food?
What we call Bhuta, and other places they call Sula.
Okay. Your favorite pastime as of now?
Listening to music.
Okay. What kind of music do you listen, sir?
I listen to all kinds of music,
Okay.
from Indian classical, Western classical, not so much, jazz, pop music of my era, 60s music.
Okay. When you said your era, I meant 90s or something. What advice would you give to your younger self of 16-year-old?
That life is good. It's the best time of life then. But you don't know everything that you think you know. At 16, we think we know everything. And children know much more today than we ever knew. So it's to keep an open mind, to learn, to respect and look up to elders. You don't have to listen to everything they say. But they may have a point of view which you don't have. That gives you depth. And yes, and to look into the future, look at the opportunities, what are coming up. The world is changing, technology is changing all the time,
Interesting.
and we have to keep pace with that.
The two best decisions of your life, which you took or maybe somebody else took for you.
Two best. Well, one was I was taken for me when I was sent as a High Commissioner
Yes.
to Trinidad.
Yes.
That was
How did that happen, sir?
that happened with well, first when I got into Rajya Sabha, because Jaswant Singh, who you know,
Yes.
from Jodhpur,
Yeah.
he used to be helping me with my affairs and all that. Then he left and got into politics, and then he was in the Rajya Sabha,
Right.
and then the the parliamentary election came up, and he was given the seat for Jodhpur from BJP, and there were 2 years of his
Term left.
left.
Yeah.
And I helped him in his election and he won. And Bhairav Singh Ji was the chief minister.
Yeah.
So, and that was the first time the government had changed.
Right.
In all these years, the first
Yeah.
time the Janta government came. So they were looking for people.
Right.
So Bhairav Singh Ji spoke to me, he said, you've been abroad and, you have good education and all that. I was very young, I was less than 30 then. I was about 28. And I'm thinking of proposing your name for ambassadorship.
Wow.
Will you accept?
Yeah.
So I took it as a joke. I said, आप भेजोगे तो जाएंगे. And forgot about it. So but a year passed by and Then I get a call that Vajpayee was the foreign minister.
Wow. Okay.
So I got a call from Bhairo Singh ji that Mr. Vajpayee would like to meet you and your wife. And you have to go and see him in the All India Institute. So I said, is he not well? He said, no, he's resting. So we went and he was very nice. He wanted to know how many children we had.
Yeah.
Talk to my wife, make sure that
Yeah, it was.
mentally we were
Prepared.
prepared. She said, हम
How did she take it?
आपको भेजेंगे, you'll hear from us.
Huh.
So then again some time passed. And then I get a call from the foreign ministry that Trinidad and Tobago has fallen vacant.
Oh,
Will you accept? And so I said yes.
wow.
It's a small place far away, but why not? And it was very nice, a young country,
Yeah.
young people, a lot of music, cricket.
You spent 2 years there?
Even 2 years there.
Interesting. So that's, I'm sure a lot of audience do not know about this bit of your life, and this would be very interesting for them
Yeah.
to know.
And the other decision
Yeah.
which I took, which I could have second thoughts on, was to get married to my wife,
Okay.
which was an arranged marriage, despite all the background I had.
Was it at the age of 25? I think.
25.
Yeah. And arranged marriage setup, a boy coming from Oxford, waltzing away into arranged marriage. Was it like
We met on total three occasions.
okay.
And basically what happened is, I always thought, I knew I had to marry the right kind of person
Right.
from our family background.
True.
Not necessarily from a royal family, but a Rajput family.
Correct.
It has a similar culture to be accepted. But then I realized that I was not, in those days, Rajput girls were not going around as much.
Right. Not.
Today there are colleges and things and so on,
Yeah.
in schools, and there's a lot of intermingling. And in those days you hardly found anybody, and those that were going around were the wrong type of girls.
Yeah.
So then finally, after a couple of years,
Yeah.
I surrendered to my mother and I said, okay, you decide. So she had a number of choices, but
Yeah.
she was very keen for my wife.
Okay.
So
And so were you eventually. Okay. So last 3 questions, sir. Your strength, your biggest strength.
my biggest strength is, I think I have patience.
And your biggest weakness? Your biggest weakness?
I give in too easily.
Okay. So, and the last part is like, a lot of us, the younger generation, I'm not calling myself the younger generation, but a lot of us are interested in community building, nation building, and we look up to you because you've done such a fabulous job. What is that one advice you would give to the audience for community building or nation building?
Community building,
Or nation building?
you have to be relevant. And you have to know the circumstances around you
Right.
and try to see life from the other person's point of view,
Right.
what they're going through.
True.
And how can you, whatever you do in life, you don't have to be doing charitable work all the time, but whatever you're doing in life, in some way or the other, you should be contributing
Right.
back to society.
Brilliant, sir. So thank you for letting us into your lives. Thank you for letting us into your home. I was profusely sweating and nervous before the interview because I've heard so much about you, and meeting you in person is a dream come true. And you were such a humble person. I didn't feel like a bit of nervousness when we sat across. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to meet you,
Pleasure to meet you.
especially after coming up from Mayo Girls School.
Thank you, sir.